We're approaching the All-Star break. Which teams need to go in big at the trade deadline? Which players are in the lead for their awards? And what the heck is going on with the Reds? We're doing a crossover today with Jeff Carr. This is Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully, but I mentioned before it is a crossover. I am not flying solo today. My co-pilot today, the Roger Murdoch, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of this particular flight, is the host of Locked On Reds. It's Jeff Carr. How you doing, buddy?
Roger.
All right. Roger. What's your vector, Victor? Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And but the best way to get a hold of me is to just go to the YouTubes and leave a message below. And by the way, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Jeff Carr, where can people follow you?
You can follow us on the Locked On Reds podcast everywhere you get Locked On MLB, and you can follow me on the social medias at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs.
All right. Now, yes, 3 Fs. 2 Fs are not enough. 3 Fs for Jeff Carr. Hey, before we get started on this, let's go over the trivia question. Okay. The trivia question is, what 3 players have made the All-Star team in 20 different seasons? And I had to phrase it like that because there were a couple of years where there were multiple All-Star games. So those didn't count as 2 appearances, 20 seasons where they were an All-Star. Let me get your take on this, Mr. Jeffrey Carr.
Let me see. I'm going to say Willie Mays was one.
That's one.
Going to say Stam Musual.
Mm-hmm.
And Ted Williams.
You got 2 out of 3. Because remember, Ted was fighting a little thing called, he was fighting the bad guys in World War II and in Korea.
All-Star game, yeah.
Yes, that was a different kind of All-Star game. By the way, Mike O'Hare -Z90 said his trivia guess was Aaron, Mays, and Ripken. He got 2 of them right. You got 2 of them right. The answers were Henry Aaron, Willie Mays, and Stam Musual. And by the way, look, if you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, an all-time legend, and still underrated, your name is Stam Musual. If you look at his career, I'm not going to play the if he played in New York card because he played in a region where at that time the Cardinals were the team from the entire West. But Stam Musual, 20 trips to the All-Star game.
One of the best things to follow on Twitter has a great old poster of Stan Musial and Ted Williams like swinging back to back, and they're like, it's 2 legends collide and I forget which All-Star game it was. But yeah.
I love that Ted Williams was always talking about how he was before analytics and scientifically broke down everything. And Mickey Mantle used to talk about when he would sit next to Ted Williams at an All-Star game, Ted Williams would be saying things like, do you put your top hand over? Do you go good? And Mickey Mantle said, I don't know. And he would get all messed up. Meanwhile, the Kurt Flood said that when he came up to Stam Musual and he said, like, what's your hitting philosophy? He says, I see a pitch and I hit the hell out of it.
See ball, hit ball.
Yep. There you go. But Stam Musual is not available on this trade deadline. There's a couple of teams out there that need to make moves. I think the Yankees made a plus move right now without making a trade by dumping DJ LeMahieu and putting Jazz Chisholm where he's supposed to be. And for now, putting Peraza at third, you've made a position better. because right now you had a bad second baseman, and you had a second baseman playing third base, and you had a Anthony, Volpe's knees were knocking because he was so nervous at shortstop. And so I think that just by changing the defense, I think you're going to see a much more confident Yankee team moving forward. I told Yankee fans not to panic a couple of weeks ago, and even though they had a rotten week and a half, they're still a playoff team. Can we pump the brakes on the people who are saying should they be sellers at the trade deadline? I mean, what the hey are we actually talking about here? But what do you think in terms of trade deadlines? Which teams do you think need to be the most aggressive and need to do something right here and right now?
I think you've got to look first at the Chicago Cubs, because Chicago Cubs look like they are owning the NL Central. I mean, I like to squint really hard and believe that my team, the Reds, could go catch them, but it seems like that would take quite an effort from both sides, negatively on the Cubs side and positively on the Red side, to get there. But even with the Brewers playing as well as they are, they're still, still a bit behind the Cubs. I think ultimately they can put the Central to bed at the trade deadline and really set their sights on, making sure that they get the bye, making sure that they pass the wild card round if they make a few trades. And really, they just need to focus on pitching. But if they go get their big pitching swing and they get the guys that they need to get, that lineup is good enough that as long as they just have fine pitching, they are going to be a threat against the Dodgers in the NLCS.
I made that same point earlier this week that I believe the National League is winnable because the Dodgers pitching staff, they got a little boost, but Glasnow coming back. But you don't mean Glasnow is not exactly gives you confidence that he's going to stay healthy. And you have Clayton Kershaw, who's pitched pretty well recently, but again, he's an
How
old
long you
pitcher.
got? Yeah.
And is capable of blowing something out. You're probably not going to see Snell. You're probably not going to see Sasaki. And I believe the Dodgers should, like by when they acquired Flaherty last year, they just need to get a couple of major league pitchers. Obviously, they have the bats to do it, but you can't have the bullpen be gassed going into the postseason. You can't have a situation like they had last year where a bullpen game was built into the rotation. The most underrated aspect of the Dodgers championship last year wasn't the fact that they snuck past the Padres with that 2-0 win, wasn't the fact that Aaron Boone is the manager of the Yankees, and therefore at least one game was handed to them, and that Rizzo forgot to cover first. But the fact that they didn't have to play the Phillies, that the Mets upset the Phillies, and the Phillies had the pitching staff to upset the Dodgers. And so once they were eliminated, and good for the Mets, they earned it. But once they didn't have to face the Wheelers and everyone in that staff, that was a much easier road to the World Series. And the Mets gave them a fight, of course. I mean, they took them 6 games, and the clincher that I attended was a bullpen game. But they need to be in a situation where they're not pulling that off next year. And I think, pitching for the Cubs and pitching for Los Angeles, if there are pitchers out there, I would just be feeding those two off of each other because, well, let's face it, they will give up anything right now to get something. And so if I'm the Pirates and I've got my Mitch Kellers and my Andrew Heaney's and everything like that, I'm saying, hey, I just got off the phone with the Dodgers, and that's what I'd be. Well, let me tell you something, Jeff. We come back. You do have another team in there?
Well, and I was just going to reinforce the Cubs for one more moment because, thinking about how deep the National League is, if you can miss that wild card round, you could miss a fate like the Phillies suffered last year, because the Phillies were a good team. It's just the Mets got hot at the right point, and that happens in the wild card round. I think that missing the wild card round will be so key for them, because it kind of feels like the Dodgers are just going to wake up in October with the number 1 seed. The Cubs could push them a little bit, though, if they make the right trades.
Well, when you take a look at the National League, you have at least 3, maybe 4 excellent powerhouse teams with Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Chicago, and you can make the argument for the Mets. There is no super team in the American League. When we come back, I want to bring up the fact that there is no super team which means don't pull Operation 2023 Orioles.
The best way to get down to the ballpark is with Game Time. I use Game Time all the time, whether I'm in Cincinnati or I'm in another city following the Reds around to a new ballpark and trying to check one off my list. Game Time makes it easy. They've got great last-minute deals, so if you go down to your favorite spot, get comfortable, and you find a good deal close to first pitch, or if you're exploring, you can see exactly the view from your seat on their app. They're so very good with the information. They give you all of your pricing up front. You're not going to be surprised by fees, and they've got the last-minute deals at the lowest prices guaranteed. That's the Game Time app. Download it today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. So go get yourself some low prices. Use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. That's on Game Time. Like I said, last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
All right. The American League is now such a weird scrum that as of this recording, the Boston Red Sox are tied for a playoff spot. They punted. They said, here, take Rafi Devers for a flat can of Sprite and the sequel rights to Joker 2. And somehow, and they, by the way, after that, they lost 7 out of 10 games with their offense anemic. And you look up today, and the Red Sox are on a 5-game winning streak. Seattle lost to New York. So the Red Sox are currently tied for a playoff spot. The Kansas City Royals, Minnesota Twins, Texas Rangers are all sub-500 teams the week before the All-Star game. And they're all 3 games out of a playoff spot. There is no super team. The Yankees, who have played better, are vulnerable. The Tigers and the Astros are vulnerable. There is no team that's not vulnerable. So which team do you think needs to do something? And by, say, Operation 2023 Orioles, don't be precious with your prospects. If you have a chance to win, let's do it now.
I don't know what capital they have to deal with, but the Toronto Blue Jays just need to keep going. They just need to make sure they shore up any spots that they think that are weak on that roster. They need to push as hard as they possibly can and see if they can take this from the Yankees, force the Yankees to be a wild card team out of that division and get this division title, because it feels like they've got so much positive momentum right now, especially with everything that they've seen over the last few years, the disappointment that they've gone through. Now is the time to just put all that behind you, make the deals you need, make sure that everything's ready to go, because you're right. Like, looking at the Tigers in the Central, they're not worried about the division anymore. They're looking at the playoff race and who's going to face them in the divisional round. If you show up with the right tools, you could beat the Tigers.
Yeah, and I think, first of all, I think that the Blue Jays need to look. Their offense has been, let's say, okay, they lost this afternoon to Chicago. It happens. They went on a 9-game winning streak. Eventually it's going to happen that you stop, and it was a day game after a night game, and there was a bunch of innings where they got a bunch of runners on. It just was kind of one of those fluke games that happens from time to time. We've all seen it happen. But if I like their offense, obviously, and their best thing that happened to them this year was the extension of Vladdy Guerrero, that you don't have the specter of trading Vlad Guerrero for pennies on the dollar come the trade deadline. The fact that they took advantage of the Yankees at their low point and then, and punched them right in the mouth with that 4-game sweep in Toronto, and George Springer hitting like he's here in a trash can while playing in there. I just think I like their pitching, but I think like I'm saying, if there's any major league pitchers that are available to give their staff depth, to have that depth in the rotation, because I like their offense. Now, John Schneider, who I've been calling for him to be fired, he is, look, as of this recording, he's proven me wrong. But I keep thinking about the 2023 Blue Jays, that was a year where the Red Sox were bad, the Yankees were not a playoff team, the seas parted, and they were brimming with prospects,
Right.
and they held on to all of them, and they didn't make a big move at the deadline, and everybody knew that they had pitching issues. And those pitching issues came to roost. They got swept by Texas, who, by the way, went on to win the World Series.
Right.
And now the Orioles, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, are not going to win it this year.
I was going to say, you know what they do have
they're going to be sellers.
now?
What?
They got prospects. They had prospects back then. They got prospects now. Like, at some point, you've got to turn those prospects either into productive major leaguers for yourselves, or you trade them for currently productive major leaguers that can help you now. And
the point,
there's teams that don't understand that. Yeah.
Well, the point I made back in 2023 on Locked On MLB was all of the prospects have to come through and they'd be a super team in order for that trade deadline to make sense. And of course, that's impossible. That is impossible. And the rule that I have for Detroit, because the seas have parted there, for Toronto could be a major big market franchise. When the Blue Jays are hot, they fill the joint. Toronto is a metropolis, and they have an entire country of Canada. Right. And so I don't want to hear any nonsense that they're the Marlins. By the way, the Marlins shouldn't be a low-budget team anyway. That's a different podcast altogether. The rule I have for the Tigers and for Toronto is simple. If the players are not going to be on your 2025 roster, they are available because you have a shot to win right now and a vulnerable Yankee team.
And I think that people misunderstand how much a postseason success really changes the course of your franchise. Like, the Reds were looking at this back in 2012 when they had the Giants on the ropes. They beat them 2 games in San Francisco, coming back to Cincinnati for 3 games. And you started to think, man, is this the beginning of a long stretch for a core of a team that still has a decently young Joey Votto, pretty decently young core? Like, how is this team going to gel together after a playoff win? They end up losing, and then they don't win another playoff game. They haven't won another playoff game since. They haven't won a playoff series since 1995. So if you've got a shot now, go get it now. Don't worry about 2026 and 2025.
Well, just remember, in 2021, Chicago White Sox won the division. They had a core of players that they signed long-term, and looked like the AL Central was theirs for a long time. And I don't know if you've read the papers. They haven't been very good recently.
Oh, they have.
Now, the Yankees did their first trade, and their first trade, I think, is already showing great strides. That they traded third baseman Jazz Chisholm in exchange for DJ LeMahieu, and now they have second baseman Jazz Chisholm. Right there, that trade is amazing, putting him in the position where he should be. Now, and of course, that just making the defenses, I've called the team the worst defense I've ever seen for a potential playoff team. But the Yankees also, they need another starting pitcher. Yep. They do. And they need another reliever. They need at least 2 pitchers. I think they also, and one of the things that made I've been quick to trash Brian Cashman on this show, but I gave him credit last year with the Jazz Chisholm trade, because what they needed was, even though he didn't have a position to play, they needed another bat in that lineup. They needed a player who was not an automatic out. And he came in and gave a different spark. But in some ways, it didn't matter what player it was, as long as there was another bat in the lineup that wasn't an easy out. Right now, Max Fried is tremendous. Devin Williams has been up and down. I mean, he's had some terrible runs. He's pitched better recently. And Weaver's been bad.
Kind of cooled off a little bit too.
Yeah. And they had the injury to Clark Schmidt. They need a starting pitcher to give them 6 innings. Mm-hmm. It almost doesn't. I mean, the fact that Marcus Stroman couldn't make the roster, couldn't make the rotation. He's now your number 3.
Yep.
He could be the number 2. If he's your number 2 come playoff time, don't worry about getting the permits for the Canyon of Heroes in early November.
Right.
So the Yankees, and of course, no one's going to give the Yankees a discount, but the Yankees could absolutely win the pennant because the American League is so wide open. I think right now, the team that, if I were going to FanDuel and was going to bet on a team to win the American League pennant, I don't hesitate to say the Houston Astros. That they have, they're kind of quietly winning that division, and they're going to have a good top of the rotation. And if Jeremy Pena and Alvarez are back, you got guys who've won it all. I don't know how bad their injuries are right now. Forgive me, H-Town. But I would lean on their experience. But if you are Detroit, if you are Toronto or New York, you got to make a run for it.
Right.
Of course, is Tampa, because they're going to be playing a lot of games at home in the heat. And I so want to see Tampa be a playoff team, just so I see baseball squirm trying to figure out where the hell they're going to play them in the playoffs.
They're not going to Steinbrenner Field for the playoffs.
They have to play somewhere.
It'd be the Atlanta Rays.
Play in Miami, or what do you do? I mean, you want to see that small crowd? Which would be worse, to see 15,000 people at Steinbrenner Field or 15,000 people at Lone Depot Park?
Right. It's still the same number, but it's certainly a very different looking stadium.
All right. When we come back, let's talk a little bit about the Cincinnati Reds. You know them, the team that I picked to win the National League Central.
If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? No, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important. And that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system, and it helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. If you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate, Open Phone can solve that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. There's no more who's handling this. Open Phone is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers.
All right. Now, as my computer is stuck here a little bit here, I picked the Cincinnati Reds to win the National League Central this year, partly because I didn't believe in the Cubs.
Right.
I thought the Cubs were overrated, and I have a little bit of egg on my face on that, because the Cubs have, as of this, they're been very, very good. Now the Brewers are breathing right down their neck, and the Brewers just manhandled the Dodgers with a walk-off win today. They have a 4-game winning streak, and they are breathing down the neck of the Chicago Cubs. And as of this recording, the Reds have a winning record, which means they'd be running away with a playoff spot if they were in the American League. They are on the outside looking in, but it's 3 games back in the loss column of San Francisco right now. And the teams that they have to leapfrog: St. Louis, vulnerable; Padres, oddly vulnerable. I really thought they'd be better this year. And of course, the Giants are one of the most unpredictable teams in baseball. The Reds could still be a playoff team. I think what the Reds need to do come trade deadline is they need to acquire a major league hitter, even if it's someone who is contract expiring, will cost them virtually nothing. Get at least 1 or 2 mediocre hitters in their lineup right now because, and this is an adage that I think Confucius once said, mediocre is better than bad. And when you have a bad player in your lineup and you replace them with a mediocre, by definition, you have upgraded. And
Right.
I would say if there was any team that is just basically trying to dump players that they're going to probably non-tender or just not offer, not offer or contracts are expiring, give them a call, offer them a plate of spaghetti with chili on top of it, and see if they'll accept that as a trade. Because I look at this lineup and I see their massive holes in it, and I look at their pitching staff, and while it's not Glavin, Maddox, Smoltz, it's capable of excellent things.
Yep.
And you happen to have a Hall of Famer as your manager, some decent arms, put some mediocre bats in that lineup, and cross your fingers that the Giants fall on their face.
Yeah, and there's a couple of different guys that I've been looking at here recently. The number one guy that I'm thinking of is a guy they faced here these last couple of days, and Dane Myers with the Marlins. I'm also thinking of Ramon Laureano from Baltimore. I mean, he's actually on an expiring contract, so it should be easier to get than Dane Myers. But yeah, that's all they need. They don't need to go out and get Aaron Judge. They don't need to go out and get Stan Musial. They just need to get some okay bats and put.
I picture they're going to get a bunch of shovels and dig up Stan.
Well, yeah, there's definitely some other guys they could look at to do that too. But
right.
I really feel like this team is an 84-win team is currently constructed. Now, that's not a playoff team in the National League, but that means that they are within striking distance if they make the right moves. And on top of that, and I think even maybe a little bit more, if they could go find that top of the bullpen type guy. Like, I really like what Emilio Pagan has done so far this season, but I would like this bullpen a lot more if there was somebody over top of him and you had, closer, Pagan, Santillan. I would feel a lot better about that, because I kind of feel like this bullpen has been exposed recently.
I want Reds fans to think about this for a little bit. Why sometimes getting that dumpster dive move can make a huge difference. It's very rarely that the trade that gets all the attention at the deadline is the one that puts a team over the top. The big deal in 2018 was Los Angeles acquiring Manny Machado. Mm-hmm. Who was the World Series MVP? Steve Pearce, who the Red Sox got for a cup of legal seafood clam chowder from Toronto. And he went on and had that fabulous World Series. Think about Marco Scutaro. When the Giants acquired him, was anyone saying, oh my God, the Marco Scutaro era has begun in San Francisco?
Right.
But no, he was the National League Championship Series MVP. By the way, when the Giants won the NLCS in 2010, the MVP was not Buster Posey, Madison Bumgarner, Tim Lincecum. It was Cody Ross, who they acquired, I believe, from the Reds. But he was no, that wasn't. Either way, he was dumped, and it cost them. I think it was a waiver move they made. Think about when the Braves, who are in a hell of a lot worse shape than the Reds are right now, went out and acquired Eddie Rosario, Jorge Soler, and Jock Peterson. Now, believe me, when those trades were made, no one yelled, stop the presses, but all three of those players, I mean, Rosario was the NLCS MVP, Soler was the World Series MVP, and Jock Peterson got huge hits. Sometimes what happens, you're not asking a player to be a superstar for a season. You're asking a player, be pretty good for a couple of months. And also keep in mind, and I know we're only supposed to think of players as parts of an algorithm and stats and this, that, and the other thing, but you get the sense for each one of those players, Pierce, Soler, Rosario, Scutaro, Ross, who were all in a situation where they were floating down the river of suck for a season. And suddenly you're like, oh, I get to play in the playoffs this year.
Everything clicks. Everything clicks.
Yeah, like, there's a little bit of enthusiasm. I remember when the St. Louis Cardinals in 2000, Mark McGwire got hurt and was reduced to a bench player, basically. He was basically reduced to a pinch hitter. And the Cardinals acquired Will Clark. And Will Clark was long away from his being an MVP candidate for San Francisco at that point. And he put on a show for 2 months where he suddenly became Rogers Hornsby for just a couple of months. Reds fans, if you get a guy who's on an expiring contract who says, wait a minute, I got a new lease on this season, and maybe can impress someone to go cha-ching in the offseason. If you get a couple of players like that, like the way Soler did with Atlanta in was it 2021, who then cashed in with Miami the next year. I think I got that math right on that. Either way, it was, that's what the Reds should be doing.
Yes.
It should be saying, what player can we get that could spark? Because you just need players who are okay in your lineup, and you have a chance to overtake the Giants, who are not. This is not the Tim Lincecum, Madison Bumgarner, Buster Posey Giants. This is we don't. I'm in the Bay Area right now. I'm seeing them up close. This is a weird team.
Right. And the Reds have the tiebreaker over the Giants too. So if it comes to it, they can, they finish with the same record. The Reds get in over the Giants. I'm with you, Sully. And that's the thing that we're all sort of holding our breath here when it comes to the trade deadline. Will Nick Krall in this front office be aggressive enough to make the necessary moves? And not just saying that, they got to trade, guys that they don't want to lose for hopefuls. Like you said, like they can take advantage of some deals that it doesn't feel like they will have to break the bank, or as everybody's worried about, mortgaging the future. It's everybody's favorite term when it comes to the trade deadline. They're not going to have to do that to get better. And this team doesn't need like a new roster. I think they go on a 4-game losing streak and people think, oh my gosh, see, it's not working. We're wasting Ellie De La Cruz and we're wasting all of this other stuff. It's like, calm down. Like they get a 7-2 win over the Marlins, back above 500. Let's get back on this train right here and make some trades.
Right. Well, don't panic, Reds fans. Just make a couple of smart moves, and there we go. You see? Exactly. I mean, this is a little message of hope from your pal Sully. Hey, I just want to just say, first of all, thank you, Jeff Carr, for crossing over today. And for those of you who are the fans of Locked On Reds who are watching this show, thanks so much for having Locked On Reds be your first listen. For my normal listeners, thanks for making Locked On MLB your first listen. Your second listen, obviously, go the other. If you're one of my listeners, go second listen, Locked On Reds, and vice versa. For your third listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night and on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, let's do the trivia question here, which sadly is not Reds oriented. It is, but it's All-Star Game oriented. Who was the last All-Star Game manager who managed the team that he was the manager at the All-Star Game was not the team that went to the World Series the year before? Notice how I phrased that. The last time the All-Star Game manager was a manager wearing the uniform of a team that did not go to the World Series the year before. And there have been multiple instances of that over the years. What was the last one? And bonus, if you can name any of the other times that it happened. And I see the wheels are turning in Jeff Carr. I'll tell you when the show ends. Jeff, where can they follow your show?
You can follow Locked On Reds everywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube as well. So make sure you go check us out.
And follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram and follow us right here on YouTube. Talking about the trade deadline. Who needs to go all in and why the Reds don't have to go all in. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Reds crossover. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. He's Jeff Carr. Jeff Carr, what can people call me?
They can call you Sully.
Well, they should.